Saya dah ambil ketetapan to put Oxford behind and to prioritize untuk fokus dalam perjuangan ini.
今年10月初，土团党青年团团长赛沙迪召开记者会，除了声称有人要用500万令吉来收买他，也说自己获得牛津大学的40万令吉奖学金，但他选择放弃。
It's a once in a lifetime opportunity, tapi saya dimaklumkan oleh University Oxford. Pertama, mereka benarkan saya untuk tangguhkan pelajaran saya, tetapi dengan syarat di mana saya akan hilang beasiswa daripada University Oxford, dan apabila saya tangguhkan tempoh pembelajaran tersebut, saya tidak akan lagi layak to apply for any Oxford scholarships or Oxford related scholarships yang saya dapat sebelum ini. It's not a maaf ya. Maaf. Saya dah ambil ketetapan to put Oxford behind and to prioritize untuk fokus dalam perjuangan ini.
牛津大学是世界顶级大学，放弃这个机会让他哽咽。什么原因让他放弃这个大好机会？什么原因让他选择继续留下？
各位观众朋友，久违了，欢迎收看我们今天的 On the Hot Seat 的节目。看过了刚才简短的视频，你就会知道我们今天的特别来宾是谁。在我还没有展开今天的访问之前呢，先来给大家做一个简短的说明。节目进行当中呢，访问进行当中，各位观众朋友可以发问题目，可以就是针对我们今天的嘉宾来发问你们的问题。那我们的制作人呢，如果觉得你的题目适合的话，他会就把问题放过来，让我们的这个嘉宾回答。当然，如果你们用中文也好，用英文也好，欢迎你们用各种的方式来提问。好，事不迟疑，我们现在就开始我们今天晚上的访问。Hi, Saddiq. Hi, welcome to Pocket Times. Welcome to On the Hot Seat. Okay, I think people have a lot of questions about you. You are one of the very, very sort of highlighted in media youth politician in Malaysia.
Notorious.
Well, I don't want to use that word. You use that word. Anyways, okay, maybe let's just start with the very recent incident in UMS.
Labuan, yeah.
Yeah, Labuan, right? UMS Labuan, right? So you yourself is also a local university grad.
Yeah.
You graduated from IIUM, right?
Yeah.
So what is your take on freedom of expression in our local universities?
I'm definitely an advocate for free speech and discourse, not only in local universities, local private schools, in all corners of Malaysian society. I think just to briefly share what happened in UMS. It's quite sad because it was a TEDx event. You know, TEDx is an internationally recognized brand, and I received the invitation letter from the university and from the administrators. Went there one day early, no problem.
Yeah.
Even send them my slides so that they can filter through to ensure that there's no political agenda in it. It was about debating and public speaking, which is very close to my heart.
Okay.
And then I think about few minutes before my slot speaking, suddenly I was informed that I cannot speak and I was asked to leave the hall.
Do you think that you were prevented to speak because of who you are?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was informed that it's because I'm too controversial. I was like, come on, I'm not that controversial. I mean, I've spoken at I think about 5 TEDx talks before about debating, public speaking, youth activism, and youth empowerment, and I mean, it's all fine. It's not like suddenly students go haywire and start to rally and riot. So I mean, it's quite unfortunate that happened, especially when I was in Labuan. I had to travel using my own pocket money from one place to another, and then Yeah, but I don't blame the university, nor do I blame the student organisers. They're quite nice, and I know that they were pressured, which led to what happened.
Okay, this is rather interesting, but have this happened when you were a student? Have you ever experienced things like that when you yourself were actually a student?
Oh yes, of course. Especially during my final semester in university. During my final semester, that was when the first 1MDB corruption story broke out. So I wrote an open letter to Datuk Sri Najib Razak. It's not I was like condemning him, I just said temporarily he should step down while investigations are ongoing. And after that letter was released, and then there's a whole backlash. After that, I was banned from entering public universities because I used to teach students in public universities. I was a lecturer, part-time lecturer in the International Islamic University of Malaysia. I was no longer allowed to teach there. So the backlash was there, and it was quite unfortunate because teaching is very close to my heart. My family is filled with teachers and lecturers. So when that happened, I think that was one of the biggest reasons why I decided to jump into politics later, is to cleanse our system of this type politics.
You were already teaching before you graduated?
Yep. So the deal was, so in IIU, debating is a credited subject. So initially I was not allowed because obviously there's an age limit and also qualification limit. But I remember IIU made a deal that if I break the record in Asia, then I'll be hired. So which I did. So yeah, it's quite lucky. Yeah.
Okay, so but things changed when you started to write that open letter.
Yeah.
What actually make you write that letter?
At that point in time, I was also the temporary special officer to YB Nancy Shukri, which is the de facto Minister of Law.
Yeah.
She's a nice lady. Even though now we're on different political ends, I still see her as a motherly figure. But I knew what was going, and what is wrong is wrong, especially when it's something which happens right in front of your eyes. So I knew something had to be done to clear up my conscience, because sitting idly or remaining silent is equivalent to committing an evil action. Because I knew what was wrong, and I just decided to keep quiet. So I decided to take things to my own hands and at least do something, even if it's a small letter.
It's just quite amazing because even at that stage of life, you're already having a lot of different identities. You were a student yourself. You taught debate then, and you were also an assistant to a politician.
Yeah.
So then, when you wrote the open letter, you were already like halfway into the political career or the political path. So how would you actually describe yourself as a person? I
like to believe that I'm quite laid back. I love cats. I listen to Selena Gomez.
Okay,
that's random, very random. But
Selena Gomez. Do you like the music or do you like the person?
When you like the person, you have to like the music. Okay, you have to like the music.
Okay.
Naturally, love you like a love song all the way. But that aside,
oh, that's so cliche. I have to take note of that.
Naturally is not cliche. Naturally is one of a kind.
Okay.
So that aside, I'm a workaholic. I mean, I think because of debating, made me who I am today. And debating in particular, when you are asked, the debate world, you are given a topic 15 minutes before you speak, and that topic is on such a specific issue. It can be about Brexit, can be about American politics, can be about UK politics, can be about the war in Syria. So it requires you to read up a lot way before. So, I mean, I like to believe I'm a fun nerd. I'm a nerd, but I know how to have fun when the time comes. But when it comes to doing research work, when it comes to working, that will always be my priority. But after work hours, I know how to have fun.
Okay, Selena Gomez.
Oh no, I think now I'm going to lose the election because of this.
Okay, anyways, so you are a person who like to have fun, but when you're serious, you're really, really serious and into it.
Yeah.
That is why you do so many things at one time, I guess. You mentioned that open letter was actually one of the reasons that you joined politics. You wanted to cleanse all this.
Yeah.
Do you want to be more specific? What do you want to cleanse,
Sure.
actually?
So it will be really long. It can be a book if I want to write what I want to do. But in
You
summary,
can save that for some other time.
Sure, sure.
Your book. You save it for your book, but maybe be very brief.
yeah. In summary, I think any democracy, which is governed by a party or coalition for more than 60 years, unchallenged and undefeated, is bound to lead to structural problems. You know, when the government gets too complacent because they know that they've never been ousted before, and as a consequence can do a lot of negative things which hurts democracy in the long run, like suppressing freedom of speech, like infringing on academic freedom, like turning Malaysia into a racial and religious glut to the point that it divides us all. So I think the way forward then is for there to be a reset button, not in which we destroy the nation and then build it back up, but that reset button is when we refresh our democratic system in which we fully liberate it from suppressing forces. For an example, easily put, when you're in power, you free up the media, ensure that the media can critically criticize the government and the opposition. You free up academic and public institutions like schools to universities to ensure that students can critically think and assess without the influence of politics. You ensure that there is true separation of powers, that the appointment of the Attorney General, to the judges, to the Anti-Corruption Commission are all done independently, and they answer to the Malaysian people and to no politician, even if that politician is from my party. I think when we build that system, no matter who gets to power, even if it's a wacko, that wacko will be answerable to the people. So that's why I say, even though people make fun of Donald Trump, right, in America, but we know that in 10 years' time, he will leave because there are term limits in America. We know that Donald Trump is answerable to the courts, to the Attorney General. That's why a lot of the crazy legislations which he wants to pass get blocked, not only by politicians, but also by the court system. So I think, ideally, I want to see a Malaysia in which democracy steers us forward, not just individuals, not just political parties, but it is a democratic system which is fully answerable to the people, not just a few group of elites.
Okay, so I can say that that's actually your personal goal.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, Lim Kik Siang once said that you are a future minister material.
He's a nice guy. Very nice guy. You know, he plays Pokemon up until today. Man, even I stopped playing Pokemon. He still plays Pokemon.
I really don't understand his fascination for that.
I don't understand. And you know, initially people thought it was just like a, you know, marketing gig. No, even in meetings, it was like, seriously, man? Like,
He's just into it, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, back to that. You know, he said you could be a cabinet minister one day. Is that your goal, actually?
I mean, one way or another, after the election, win or lose, I have to complete my master's in Oxford. I mean,
but win, how are you going to complete it if you win?
I have to take the executive course, which is 4 months. But then I still, I won't get my master's done. There's a distance learning. I still have to do it.
So you have it all planned, you know,
Of
win
course.
or lose, okay?
Of course.
All right. I think it has been a very busy year for you in a way. There's a lot of things. The open letter to His Royal Highness, which again, you know, invoke a lot of controversial. Okay, and then of course, you know, the scholarship thing.
100,000, yeah.
The scholarship saga, and also someone tried to buy you out and things like that. And earlier on with Hamida Osman fiasco. Yeah, right. Have this incident actually affect your decision to pursue a political career?
To be honest, what they did, especially when they started to try to buy me over, or when that didn't work, threaten my family, especially my dad and my brother, that was the turning point of my political career, because I already told my top party leaders that I would like to pursue my masters in Oxford, which I was supposed to go in October, but I postponed it to next year. At that point, I really wanted to go. I was ready, you know. But when they got that personal, you know, they were not informed that I was about to leave. When they started to threaten even my father and my brother on such personal things to get to me, I think that indicates a greater problem which inflicts our political system. And if anything, that just imputes a greater burden and responsibility on me and my colleagues to work a lot harder to ensure that the very same things which happened to us will no longer repeat for this generation and the other. So I think if anything, that turning point was much better, because I was about to really just leave, not leave forever, but to complete my 1-year masters. But it kept me here, and now that is keeping me going.
It makes you more determined that
Yeah.
this is the path, the way to go.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting since we are on this topic, right?
Yeah.
Because people have a lot of questions with this whole incident. There
Yeah.
were the. Let's start with the
Sure.
Oxford.
Sure.
Oxford scholarship,
Yeah.
and they offer, and then after that there were this 5 million thingy.
Yeah.
They are
Abdul
trying
Rahman.
to buy you out, and they were blackmailing. Can you just briefly walk us through, because when it
Sure.
all broke out, right, I was also very confused. So
Sure.
first you have the scholarship, and then
Sure.
the buyout thing happened at the same time.
Sure.
How did it?
So let me just summarize. Again, it's a very long, complicated story. But to summarize, in March I was informed that I was accepted to Oxford.
Yes,
That's when the offer letter came in. And then, obviously for
but
you to
nobody knew that.
obviously my parents knew that.
Oh, I mean your parents.
But
I mean,
I told my parents slightly later, because I obviously want to surprise them. So the first letter came in was a conditional offer, because in order for you to get the full offer, you need to show that you have the financial capacity or you have a full scholarship to cover. And then the scholarship came in, I think it was sometime closer to Raya. I can't remember when, but closer to Raya, that's when I kept it, and I surprised my parents with that letter. And I got the full offer, the unconditional offer to enter Oxford. And then from there onward, way before, since last year, there were a few parties or ministers who approached me. Namely, for example, Hamzah Zainuddin. YB Nancy I've always approached, but she has never offered me any money. That's why I say she's motherly to me, because she knows me. I mean, don't offer money, just talk to me, show a better future, and it's fine. Then 2 other ministers who I can't name for the time being. So
you can't name them because
Hamzah Zainuddin I can, because I mean that guy is, I mean, I trusted him so much, but after what he did. Yeah, but yeah. So I think sometime in June, when I got the offer, the scholarship, I think from there onward, I think they were fearful that I wouldn't leave. Because I got, because before this they thought that if I just give Saddiq a scholarship, then he would leave because he will be beholden. But now, since I got the scholarship from a party which is not
related.
Yeah, which is not related, so as a consequence I have more liberty to what I was about to do. But I didn't need, like the push or the money or whatever. So from there onward, I informed that Habibur Rahman was the main person. If you know Habibur Rahman, is right-hand man to Datuk Sri Najib. So him and his few other colleagues, I think, tried to push me to a corner. One is through that money, which is 5 million, and stated that it's not 5 million cash, but it's 5 million through starting up debate centres. I think because they know that I love debate centres. And I don't know how they got a proposal. I think I sent that proposal about 2 years ago to the Johor state government to open up a debate centre in Johor, which costs about 1.5 million. So it's like 3 debate centres and also the scholarship, which is all equivalent up to 5 million, so that I leave. But I didn't give an answer because I don't think it was necessary. In my mind, I said, I'm going to leave anyway. I don't need the money. I want to leave and I want to come back. But they didn't know that. So they thought that by October, since I did not leave, that means I didn't accept
the offer.
Yeah, that means I'm not going to leave. But they didn't know, for the School of Public Policy, class only starts in October. It's not in September. Undergrad studies start in September. So that's when it started to get a lot more personal, when threats were made against my father and my brother. I think this are things which I've already lodged a report to the police. MACC is also informed about this because the police and MACC work hand in hand. And now I heard it's already brought up to the Bukit Aman, which is the main criminal branch, on this issue. Because the threats
since
made...
you're on MACC, right, there are a lot of questions when we said that we're going to interview, say, Saddiq today.
Yeah.
The questions that we got, why did you not go to MACC at the first place?
Sure. So there are 2 key reasons. I mean, it's what I've mentioned over and over again, but it's the same question.
They keep on coming back.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because when the offer is linked with a blackmail, the main party who should go to first is the police.
Okay.
Because the
There's a
blackmailing is
criminal
particularly
element
important.
in it.
Yes. And the police works hand in hand with MACC. I think that was what I was informed, and that's what exactly when it was taken up by the Bukit Aman, which is a special body there which will investigate on this matter. And it also links to threats not only against me, but also against my family, and also against the informant. So it's a very complicated matter, but I'm very thankful to the police. I think met up with them almost 4 times, and they've assisted me thus far. And hopefully this matter will be resolved soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now we are over with all the sagas and fiasco.
See, over. I wouldn't say
No,
over,
it's not
but
going to be over.
Yeah,
But I mean,
think,
only here at this
Yeah.
for
I have
the
a-
show
yeah.
for this interview. But
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you actually someone actually asked Ping Yen, one of our audience actually asked, why do you choose Bersatu but not other political parties
That's a brilliant
or
question.
multiracial party?
Yeah. I mean, I've expressed this before. My preference for a political party is a multiracial party. And as one of the co-founders of Bersatu, I obviously wanted Bersatu initially to be multiracial, but as I mentioned, in order for me to realize that dream, that Malaysian dream, and I want Malaysia to be multiracial, I want to free up our democratic institutions, you must be able to win the election of a coalition or a party which has governed for more than 60 years through a myriad of disadvantages placed on the current opposition. The question then becomes, how do you break through UMNO strongholds, UMNO support base, you know, the rural suburban communities, for example, in Mersing and Kota Tinggi. So let's very briefly look at electoral trends. People said last election showed that the success of multiracial parties is there. But when you truly meticulously look at the outcome of last election, it wasn't the case. For an example, last election, despite the fact that opposition gained a popular vote and gained 8 additional seats, UMNO, as a Malay-based party, gained more seats. Because the biggest losers for BN were MCA, MIC, SUPP and Gerakan. UMNO gained 9 additional seats. UMNO took more seats from PKR and PAS. PKR and PAS lost more seats than what they won in PRU 12. So what we did is that we did a survey, we commissioned a few surveys and studies on 20 selected constituencies, places in which UMNO traditionally won and where we need to win in order for us to get into power. And unfortunately, there are still a huge number of Malaysians who are not ready for that. Because they want a new, refreshed, reformed-centric, Malay-based political party to be in a multiracial coalition. So it's almost like BN, but not a
It's
UMNO,
another BN.
Yeah, but not an UMNO which dominates, you know. So in Harapan, you'll notice it's a lot more equitable. So I think that will be a model which will get us into power. And once we fully reform our democratic structures, when you depoliticize, de-racialize education, the media and the rest, I think that will open up the floodgates for us to move forward as a nation and as one multiracial nation.
Do you actually think that, first I noticed that this is actually, you're justifying your means by your ends.
Yep.
So the end is to reset the whole democracy.
Yep.
It's like a reset button for you. But this is what we have not been doing it right.
Yeah.
The means.
Yeah.
So by continuing the same formula, don't you think that we are going down the same road?
Sure. So I don't think it's the same formula for a few reasons. One is, as I mentioned just now, let's take the worst case scenario where we win, but then we suddenly become like UMNO. We suddenly then replace UMNO, and we will be the new UMNO in Harapan. That will never happen because we're not contesting as many seats as UMNO. UMNO traditionally contests up to 80, 90 and plus Sabah Sarawak at times more. So we are quite an equitable coalition. So there's no one domineering party. Second thing is, if we win, we campaign and we got into power on the message of reforms and for a multiracial Malaysia. And if you suddenly backtrack that message and you are a government which just got power for the first time and you are betraying the Malaysian people who have just taken out another government. You know, people are used to the concept of a two-party system, and that's my dream, for Malaysians to take out one government from the other and becomes a norm, not something which only happens 60 years. So I think it's the second reason.
Maybe not.
I mean, yeah. So I mean, I think the second. That the third reason why I say this is very different. I think once we push for institutional reforms, when we free up education, when we truly embrace the separation of power, when we ensure that media can critically assess people, utusan will no longer become a mouthpiece for bigots. When that happens, I think the younger generation, from school to university, my generation, your generation, will push for multiracial Malaysia. And in the future, I predict, I don't think it will be long, but I think if you're in power, I think about 10 years, 2 terms, you will even see parties like UMNO, MCA, MIC transitioning to a multiracial model. Finally, I'd like to say, Bersatu is not a perfect model. It is a work in progress. But from the very beginning, as one of the founding fathers, young, as one of the founding members, we ensured that Bersatu accepts membership from non-Bumi, something which UMNO has never done and up until today has never done. And at the same time, for example, the youth wing...
But there's still like a differentiation between Bumis and non-Bumis,
that's why I say it's not a perfect model, it's a work in progress. But what I can influence is the youth wing.
Yeah.
And the youth wing is multiracial, and we even have non-Bumis, for example, Saudara Murali, in the highest leadership position as one of the EXCO members. So he's, for example, one of the cabinet ministers, when you put it, in the party. And it shows that the trend for change is there. But again, in order for us to fully change, we need to reform the system first. And for us to reform the system, we must be able to beat UMNO where they are strongest, which is in the rural areas, in the Malay heartland, and we need to break through in order for us to move forward.
Okay. Since we're already in the topic of Bersatu, you're so young. You're only 25. And you're the youth chief. If you compare it to like much more mature or even new political party in Malaysia, their youth chief is not that young.
Yeah.
How are you coping with it?
The good thing is, I mean, it's cliche to say that age is just a number.
Yeah.
But
you expect that from someone who loved Selena Gomez. Anyway.
Oh, you're still stuck at that, huh?
Yeah. Okay. So age.
Yeah. Firstly, I think as long as you are able to show that you are capable to lead, and that you have the support of the members and the rakyat behind you, it's very much possible. So just to show, even though I'm 25 years old, but if you look at Bersatu's membership, which now is about 200,000, 57%, the majority of our members are those below the age of 35 years old. So that means Bersatu is a youth-led party. And a lot of the young people, not in urban areas, in a lot of suburban and rural areas, have subscribed to the agenda of the party, and the vast majority are below 35 years old. So I think that signals that even if you're young, it is possible to lead. But secondly, I'm very glad that I have leaders like Tun M, ironically, who's 92 years old, but who champions for greater youth representation. So it's not just about accepting. When I first set up the party, I was 23 years old. So I mean, like, bloody hell, 23. So like, he accepted me and he gave me leeway to run the party. I appointed non-Bumis. I pushed for term limits within the party, to ensure that no president and chairman can run for more than 9 years. We ensured that at the same time, that the selection of youth leaders is done through a meritocratic process. We have a corporate interview process where you pass CV, and after the CV process, you have to be interviewed. We have to ensure that you have a diverse background, not just all professionals, but you have, for example, one guy who was formerly a mat rempit. We have a person who's a professor. We have a person who is an OKU. We have such a diverse group of people. And I think that's the aim and the way forward.
Okay.
So I think it's very much doable. Age is just a number. I think it's very important for young people to liberate themselves
but
from that complacent structure.
When you're saying that you're having a lot of freedom, a lot of liberty, and you can lead well, but there are also like founding members of the party that left.
Yeah.
And interestingly, you were pinpoint. You were one of the reasons for this founding member to leave. How they even say that you're biadab, very like you don't follow the Malay culture. Can you just explain this a little bit?
Well, if the Malay culture is a culture of subservience, then I don't subscribe to it. I think the Malay culture means that we must speak up against any abuses. We must pursue unconventional reforms for us to liberate ourselves from current clutches, so that we can move forward as one collective society. So I mean, if there are no resentment or reservations to the changes which I'm bringing, that means I fail. I mean, you are bound to step on some feet when you are moving forward.
Okay.
But as long as the cause is right and just, I think that's the right thing to do.
Okay. You mentioned Tun M just now.
Yep.
Yeah. Everybody in this country knows him. Everybody has their
Hopefully.
own views
Yep.
about him.
Yep.
What was your view of about him before and after you worked with him?
It's very interesting. When I was a kid,
Yeah.
I really adored him as a kid. I remember it was during when Malaysia hosted the Commonwealth Games.
1980.
I think I wrote a letter to Tun M, and he responded. I was like, oh my god, you responded. That's me, like, I don't know, I was 4 or 5 years old. I don't know. But then when I got into debating, critical thinking,
Yeah.
and then you assess policies and issues, I was very skeptical of Tun M.
Okay.
I think I wrote a lot of things about him as well, and people dig it up, they'll find it. And I remember even when I started speaking up, I never met up to them. People thought I've always had good relationship with Tun M Tan Sri.
Yeah.
I did not meet up with them at all. When I did all of this. Only after that. I remember when I started to get punished, Tun M's office called me up, and then we had a meeting. And I remember even after that first meeting, I was
Yeah.
still very skeptical. Because
Okay.
I know what he wants is very genuine. So it's not like, oh, it's for his son. No. I mean, he's 92 years old. It's about... Okay, I want to say it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ah.
So I mean, something's about to happen. So this is his end. It is the end. He could have just chillaxed, don't do anything, and his legacy will be intact. His children will not suffer. Everything is fine. But he decided to take this route. But at the same time, I want to know whether, while he wants change, what changes do he want, and are those changes long-lasting? For example, will he be for freedom media? Will he be for academic freedom? Because I want to ensure that students will be able to speak up their mind. Will he be for the separation of powers, the empowerment of the judiciary? All of that. But when he put that commitment on paper, when he starts speaking about it over and over again, repetitively, when we form a coalition under that belief, I think if he suddenly backtracks on it or backpedals, firstly, I think, I mean, again, the timeline for him to... Yeah, so the timeline is not that long. So I think he knows himself that this is the final push. But secondly, when you say it over and over again, and you are in a coalition which believes in that, I think he means it. And I think from there onward,
politicians made promises over and over and
True.
over again. Whatever that he committed that he will be doing will only be no longer a promise when he realizes it.
Yeah.
Okay, if you guys come
Sure.
into power, right? But you look at it, when Malaysians look at Tun M, we are all very skeptical. Talking about freedom of expression, in this building alone, a lot of people can still...
Yes.
The memory of Operasi Lalang
not Selalang.
are still so fresh in their mind,
Yeah.
right? So
That
these
shouldn't
are
have happened.
facts that has transpired,
Yeah.
which we can't change, which we can't deny,
Yeah.
against promises of someone who has committed all this.
Yeah. So I think,
What was really the thing that he convinced you,
sure.
apart from saying it over and over
Sure.
and over again?
So there are two key points to point out here. So I think, as I mentioned multiple times before, I disagreed with a lot of things which he did in the past. However, if we keep on looking in the past, which prevents our ability to move forward, I think that hinders genuine progress. I mean, even if you look at Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim, if you consider his past in UMNO, it's particularly colourful.
Yes.
But when he made a commitment for change, and he followed up with it, we see success models like Penang, like Selangor today. But that was when he truly pushed for that change. And that's Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim, which is still strong, fit to lead. And imagine Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad. Just imagine, put yourself in his shoes when he's 92 years old, on the final stretch of his life, sacrificing his legacy, putting his children's like life, putting everything which he has built on the line for one cause. I think that shows that he knows what he has done before is wrong, and his final push is to correct the past mistakes which he has made in order for us to move forward. And I believe in that.
Okay.
I mean, to me, that's... I can't imagine. I mean, I'm just imagining myself. I'm 92 years old. I mean, but yeah, if I still, and I mean, he enters office 8:30 in the morning, leaves 5:30 every night. He'll go down to ceramah, every day during weekends. I met up with his grandson. The grandson is complaining like, oh, I don't have enough time with my grandfather because that's how busy he is. He's 92 years. He's the busiest and most hardworking politician in Malaysia. So it's not perfect. It's never perfect. And I believe if, I don't know, who knows, he lives 110 years old and suddenly change his path and betrays the cause, I will be the first person to speak up against him. And there will be a lot of those. But when we are in power, as I said, the first thing which we will do when we are in power is to reduce our power. Because the new Prime Minister will have term limits placed upon him. The new Prime Minister will not be the Finance Minister. The new Prime Minister cannot appoint the MACC chief. So let's assume that we have...
So you do believe power corrupts?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I think it's the first thing we must change.
Okay, you know, when we talk about Tun M, there are also certain people that actually equate you as like a Bersatu version of Jamal Yunus. I'm so sorry, but there were, you know, there were things like that on the internet sometimes.
God. Yeah. No, it's fine, yeah.
Okay, so you know, they think that you're just being lucky for Tun M. What is your view on this?
Well, I think there are two things. One is lucky, Tun M. Two is I still can't get off Jamal Yunus. Oh God. Oh God. I'm pretty sure I didn't.
He has been on this seat as well.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So I mean, just very briefly on Jamal Yunus. Pretty sure I didn't. What is it? What's the himpunan? He put himpunan baju merah. Maruah Melayu. Where the hell I oppose that? I mean, when he denigrates racial minorities in Malaysia, I oppose that. I think an attack against my Chinese colleagues is an attack against me as well because we're all Malaysians. I mean, never mind. Okay, I think if there are those who still believe that I'm like Jamal Yunus, I think we have to talk, definitely. Or I definitely have to reflect and find a way to move forward. But I think the more pressing question which you asked is about, am I just lucky because of Tun M?
Yeah.
So as I mentioned before, there's often a misconception that I've met Tun M before, I've like befriended him or like anything.
Okay, but you...
And I've never.
You have never.
Like, the first time I met up with Tun M was after I spoke out. Way after. And at the same time, if I had not lead the youth wing to where we are at today, where 57% of those who register are below 35 years old.
Okay.
I don't think I'll be here. I think in the end, it is the people who will decide whether I've done a good job or not. But to me, as long as my conscience is clear, and I know that I've attempted to do something, I already consider that to be a success. Getting it at the end is definitely a rewarding experience, but the journey alone, pursuing for those change and reforms, is already a rewarding one.
Okay, it's interesting actually. The reason that we are having you here today, it's because I think a lot of our audience, they actually have a lot of curiosity towards the Malay community. You know how polarized our community or our society is today. So we have a lot of query, and especially we wanted to know like young people, young Malays like you, what do you think about a lot of issues that we have been discussed over and over again. For instance, one of our audience actually asked, this audience, his name is Serious Rakyat. Actually, it's a friend.
Very serious. Should listen to Selena Gomez to become less serious.
I think he will have a comment now in the comment section about Selena Gomez. I think maybe he likes Taylor Swift. He's gonna kill me anyways. Okay, his question to you is, do you believe in a Malaysian's Malaysia, or do you consider that prioritization of Bumiputra is inevitable?
Okay. I believe in Bangsa Malaysia. And one of the reasons why I buy into Tun M's concept of Wawasan 2020, if you notice, when we first introduced it in 91 and 92, I was just born then, the 9 challenges posed to realize Wawasan 2020, the first challenge posed is to create a united Bangsa Malaysia. And that's always been my dream. It is that Malaysian dream. And I think we will achieve it. And it's never easy. If you follow the civil rights movements in America, it took decades before it was fully realized.
Yeah.
And in Malaysia, I think we are going down that path. It is not an easy journey. It is an arduous one. There will be a myriad of barriers. There are compromises which must be made, but I think we will get there.
Okay.
But in order for us to get there, we need that push. We need a democratic system which will enable us to reach that path. And I think specifically, for example, addressing the sensitive issue of Bumiputra privileges,
Yes.
I think on this issue, we need to revert back to the founding principles and founding fathers of our nation. From Dato' Jaafar to Tunku Abdul Rahman to Tun Abdul Razak, who first introduced the NEP.
Yes.
When the NEP was first introduced, it is a policy, not a right-based issue, but a policy for poverty alleviation. And we saw a massive shift. Because at that point in time, you follow the stats, Malays only had 2.9% equity share in the economy, right? The Chinese didn't have that much. The majority was foreign-owned
Yes.
from the remnants of British. And then after that, we all moved forward as a nation. Problem is, then there was a ceiling. There we started to build a lot more of Malay elites than those who really trickled down to the Malays who genuinely needed the B40s, right? So I think there must be a recalibration. That recalibration is which we assist those who genuinely need it in order for us to move forward as one nation. I think that time will come, but in order for that time to come, as I mentioned, we need to free up our democratic structures to ensure that fellow Malaysians will realise truly what is their potential, what is their rights, and what's the right way forward to move Malaysia.
So it's like regardless of race.
Yeah.
Okay. I hope that answered his questions. Okay. Since we are on this topic of race and all those things, you claim to be a reformed racist in a way, right? Okay.
I find it hard to believe that.
Yeah, you did that. You
Yeah,
said it. Okay, so what is your take on race relation now?
So there are two things to point out. One is racism or racist means when you believe in your race and your race is superior than another. I don't believe in that. I definitely do not believe in that. As I mentioned, I believe in an equitable Malaysia. But at the same time, I also want to ensure that all races in Malaysia have an equitable footing to move Malaysia forward. And I think that's very different than believing that one race is superior. I think the point in which you go down as far as calling another person pendatang, I think that's racist. The point in which you say, for example, when I'm born in this skin colour or on this particular race, as a consequence, I'm superior, I think that's racist. But I think the way in which you push for an equitable Malaysia to ensure that the economic pie is shared equitably, I think that's economic justice. But that economic justice, as I mentioned, must be done right and must target the communities who genuinely need it. So, as a consequence, for example, from a policy perspective, a Malay who comes from a millionaire family should not get a university spot over a Chinese who's in the B40.
Yeah.
I think that's wrong, but it's targeted. At the same time, I don't think, for example, corporations should discriminate those, for example, Malay graduates who have an accountant and engineering background in the private sector, as two reports or studies showed by UM and UKM. So I think these are issues of racism or subtle and blind racism which affects all communities in Malaysia. And as I said, that in order for example, if I go down the UMNO line of like, alah, tapi orang Melayu kena diskriminasi dekat dalam sektor swasta, that means we can discriminate them in the public sector, we will be going down a very dangerous tunnel. What's the way forward? As I said, once you reform education, reform our democratic structures, I think those issues will be resolved well. But I think as long as those structures are not reformed, the other problems will still come about.
But do you think that, you know, we need to be a certain race to champion the rights or whatever of or interests or of a particular race? Because by saying that, I feel that you still think that it's somehow or other you are still going to champion the Malay race rights on an equitable footings.
Yeah. So to me, what I care the most about, as I shared just now, well, if I talk about matter of policy, it would be like a 10-minute speech about how to reform NEP. But to summarize, how do you balance discrimination which exists among communities? Discrimination in the private sector, discrimination in the public sector. I believe the way to forward it or to champion it is not through saying that I'm born in this race, therefore I'm superior. No. The way you forward it is to resolve it through a policy platform. When Tun Abdul Razak introduced the NEP, as I said, it was more of a policy platform to resolve race woes and problems. And I think the biggest tragedy is when policies are translated into rights.
Yeah.
And I think the way forward, for my part, is to look at it more from a policy perspective more than a rights-based perspective.
Okay.
I think that's very important. The second thing to also note here is that while policies can be abused, I think once more and more Malaysians pursue that Malaysian path, and I think if you look at studies, for example, from the STAR, I think the STAR compiled one, Merdeka Center compiled another one, a lot more young people, youth in general, are associating more and more to the Malaysian identity. I think from there onward, policies and the demand and the consciousness for that national unity will be realised and made a reality. So I think it's never a perfect path to move forward, but I think we will move forward.
Okay. Race is one thing. There's another thing which is very sensitive. Okay, I don't like to use the word sensitive.
Sure.
But what we always very controversial in this country is religion.
Oh, that's a lot more sensitive than race. I mean, just to share one interesting fact. If you look at all the rankings, which is quite kind of ironic, by the way, when some of the radical Malays say that Chinese and Indians are penatang.
Yeah.
But when you look at the ranking, according to race, what you associate to, there are three identifiers. Race, religion, and the national identity. It is the Chinese who associate first to the national identity. The Malays associate it third. First is not race, by the way. It is religion.
Malays?
Yeah. Religion. Only second race. Third is national identity. So I mean, I just want to point out that it's actually less of race, but a lot more of a...
yeah. So
Yeah.
that's why, the Chinese are we are always so frustrated in a way when we have actually started to identify ourselves as Malaysian. When we speak to
We should identify as Malaysians.
Yeah, when we speak to the people from PRC, right, we will be telling them that we are Malaysian Chinese and not Chinese per se.
Yeah.
So this is how we identify ourselves. But sad to say that some part of the community do not accept us as who we are or how we identify ourselves. Actually, the reason that I raise up religion is, do you think that the Malays are getting more and more Islamization? That's the point about Islamization.
Yeah.
So someone asked this in Chinese.
Yeah.
So do you think that the Malays are more Islamic in a way?
Yeah. So I think radical Islam and Islam are two very separate things. And I think the question there, I think, is a lot more on radical Islam.
Yes. What is radical from your point
Sure.
of view?
So for example, if I'm just a practicing Muslim and I mind my own business, I think that's fine. We have Muslims, for example, all around the world who are peace lovers and who want to, just live a normal life like any other religious believers. But the point in which, for example, there's so many cases in which there are religious disputes, and then I go like, oh no, your rights doesn't matter because I'm a Muslim, I'm the majority, screw off. Sorry. Bug off. I think that's wrong. And I honestly believe that one of the biggest threats which Malaysia will face is the rise of radical Islam. Why do I say this? So clear indicators is when you have a larger group who sympathizes with radical terrorist causes. So let's look at the Pew Research Center. Pew Research published the findings on Malaysia. I think about 3 out of 10 of the respondents who asked, Muslims, said that they were sympathetic of IS, Islamic State.
Okay, yeah.
And, that's impressing. Second
is.
is on, for example, let's look at hudud. And now this is one of the most divisive issue. And I know when I say this, it will hurt my political goals. But, to me, what's wrong is wrong, especially when people politicize this issue to the point that it doesn't make sense just for votes. For example, hudud. If you look at Malaysia, a lot of them support without knowing what it actually stands for. Without knowing that, for example, I think what Tunam rightfully points out, that, Malay support said, we should support. Then we ask, okay, so in general, if we do it now, what does this mean? Does this mean, for example, like RUU 355, we show in the past now, it means that a rapist will get less of a punishment than an adulterer. Because that's how the law is, because they're pushing up to 30 years. and the law to punish rapists is lower. I mean, people need to know the legal consequences, how it will be practiced in real life. People say it's so good, but look at Nigeria. They implemented it in northern Nigeria, and as soon as the kid was flogged, they put a moratorium. They say Brunei placed a moratorium. So I think one thing which we must deal with is this, and there must be an honest conversation on it. Not a conversation like Donald Trump, which is Islamophobic and just labels all Muslims as radicals, because there are a lot, and the majority of Muslims are moderates. But these moderate Muslims must speak up a lot more to move us forward. Because if not, democracy works in a way in which the noisiest people will be at the center stage. And currently they are at the center stage. We must change that.
Since you raised the issues of hudud, I've spoken to some people from the ground. I think a lot of Malays, it's not like, one thing they don't understand about it. I think they don't dare to oppose to it.
Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit about this?
This is where I was, again, as mentioned, I had my dark past, before I entered military.
Yes.
I call it Zaman Jahiliya. Before I entered military school, it was a multiracial boarding school. I was a racist, I was a bigot, I was like Muslim, not just a Muslim, the radical Islam kind of Muslim. So I think I know where they're coming from. I think we can't just call them you're radical. You need to talk to them, have dialogues, and then from there onward build that relationship of trust. But I think the way in which can be dealt with. So for example, people make fun of Tun M, calling him racist or whatever, but Tun M is one of the first and only Malay leaders who dared to stand up against hudud in Malaysia from 1980s. And the way he does it is very simple, two ways. One is he points out that Islam stands for justice, and all of us, the Muslims will agree with this. But how is it fair and just for a Muslim who commits theft to have his hand chopped off, and another community gets jailed for 1 year? He just uses it's unfair. And secondly, and to me this is not just me saying, look, you can refer to, for example, Yusuf Al-Qaradawi, one of the most prominent Muslim leaders, people like Tariq Ramadan, and they say that even in scriptures, you have to fulfill basic requirements first for there to be an equitable society, a just and fair society, a society in which democratic structures, or at least power, is in the hands of the people and cannot be abused. That must all come first before you start talking about hudud and the rest. Problem is, we are focusing on this first and thinking that Islam can only be summarized through hudud, while ignoring economic equity, justice, fairness, to ensure that there will be no abuse of power if it happens, where only the rich in the end will get exempted from the law, but the poor will suffer. If a rich person fornicates, then it's fine. If a poor person, he'll get flogged or will be in prison or will have his life destroyed. So I think people must think and know what the consequences are, because I think the biggest tragedy then is when that happens and we realize that we've made a huge irreversible mistake when that happens.
Okay. So now you have started to, let us learn a little bit more about the Malay youth. Another question, maybe this is a good time to ask. How do you feel the enthusiasm of the Malay youth towards politics? CK Chan, this audience actually asked this question. Yeah.
I think there's been a Malay awakening, an awakening which I've never seen before.
Since when?
I think since Tun M jumped.
Okay.
So, and I hate to believe that we are just a bunch of followers, or more of a followers more than leaders or critical thinkers. But we see that trend. For example, let's look at GE12, 2008, the first so-called tsunami. Ask any analyst and say that was primarily contributed due to Tun M's attack on Tun Abdullah Badawi, which shifted a lot of votes, and even the Malay voters who did not vote for the opposition, they abstained from voting. It was highest number of spoiled votes recorded ever. And that's why you see swings even in BN strongholds like Johor. And imagine now, and I see that a lot, like for example when I go to public universities, A survey showed by Challenger showed that 91% of those surveyed out of 5,007 respondents, a huge bank, showed that they want to. They distrust Najib Razak's government and they want a more integrity-led government. So I think that awakening is there, but there is a problem.
Yes. What is
One
the
is it's still personality-based. For example, it's still 2NM driven or whatever, but that has to change. It cannot be personality-based because personalities change. But ideas and ideals continue. Principles remain. Personalities can yeah. So
Yes.
I don't like going there, but so I think that's one thing which we need to improve on. Second thing is we must be a lot more daring in speaking out. So when you talk to them personally, they'll say it, and that's why usually when you look at polling records or surveys, it never matches with the actual election results. Because for example, if you are a Malay public servant, you are a teacher, and suddenly a pollster calls you up, who are you going to vote for?
Okay.
I don't think you're going to say you're going to vote for the opposition. Be like, oh my god, I'm a cikgu. This might be a government spy or something. So like last election, I was one of the researchers.
Okay.
You know, government was polling at 65%, but election came 48%. A huge difference. Huge difference. But you can't blame them because fellow Malaysians will not want to say it.
Well, yeah.
Because they are, you know. But for Malays, I think they must be more daring. I mean, in Islam we call this Amar Ma'ruf Nahi Munkar. Defend what's right and fight against injustice. We must, even if the injustice is caused by someone from your community, even if that person is a Malay Muslim, if that person steals your money, fight against him or her. Race should not matter. A wrong is a wrong. And I think that awakening is taking place, especially among the youth. It's not perfect, but it is there. You know, people say that, but in the end, 3.8 million young people have not registered.
Yeah.
But you are looking, if you want to compare Malaysia and the rest, Malaysia is one of the best voter turnout track record than even United States. United States, when they had Barack Obama, was 65%. Malaysia was 85%. And people say youth are not registering. They are. For example, for this election, in the most recent list given out by EC,
Yes.
voters below 40 years old will take up about 40% of the electorate. 40%. Voters below 30, 21 to 30 is about 19 to 20%. A huge voter bank. I've never witnessed this, and I think that will be the pioneers of change. Whenever you just talk, there might be some pessimism. But change always takes place
But do you think that this
when you
is,
least expect it.
But do you think this is just the urban Malay youth and not the rural one? Because most of the time when you look at it, it's like if the rural Malay, they don't vote against this current government, they are going to still retain power.
That's my job. And
Okay.
that's Bersatu's job.
So how do you think so far? Because we are going
Sure.
into election next year in a
Sure.
few months' time.
Yeah. So I think that's why I said I've witnessed that shift, a shift which I've never seen before. You can ask any other Pakatan Rakyat leaders. For example, when I went to Kota Tinggi and Mersing, Kota Tinggi and Mersing are UMNO stronghold. They won with a majority more than 15,000. It's like Lingkit Siang Zilang Patah, you know?
Yes.
Huge majority. Last election, I was informed by Mat Sabu when they hosted ceramah there with the top leaders from Pakatan Rakyat, only about 100 turned up.
Okay.
Recently, we went. You can ask people like YB Lu Chintong from DAP.
Yeah.
2,000, 3,000 people turn up. In Kedah, it was never the case where opposition can amass more than 5,000 people. When Bersatu hosts an event, like in Jelon, more than 5,000 people turn up. And this is not our numbers. You can cross-check with the police. Police actually quoted more. Sinar Harian quoted 7,000. And we didn't, this is not even like, Bersih. No, it's just like,
Drama.
but these are in rural areas. When you do in PJ, 5,000. When you do in rural areas, you get more turnout. And opposite of the last election. But I'm not an optimist. I wouldn't just say, this is 100% going to win. In order for us to win, you cannot just rely on one community. You cannot just ensure there's a rural swing or a Malay swing. It must be a Malaysian swing.
Okay.
And that's why I say while we gain more support in rural and suburban areas, I would still like to plead to the urban voters. Trust us. And if we fail, kick us out. But the point is, we have tasted a two-party system by winning. And when the new government knows that the government can change, that means they'll be a lot more accountable because history has shown that people are the one who command democracy, not the political elites.
Okay. All right. Where are you gonna be contesting?
That one, I mean, it's not like I'm trying to evade that question, but we haven't finalized that. And most, I mean, if Datuk Sri Najib that suddenly decides to call the election after, I don't know, July and August, then I'm screwed because I have to fly off.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't think he will, because Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim will be released then. So I think we'll call it somewhere in April. But from what I heard, I'll most probably be placed in a, again, very difficult seat, but we'll see.
Rural? Urban?
Suburban.
Suburban.
Yeah, suburban, rural, as always. Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna ask you this last question. We asked this question to a lot of Malay guests, political guests in particular. What do you think about Chinese schools?
Well, it's a very interesting question.
Yeah.
So there are two things I'd like to highlight here. First thing first is, in order for us to realize the concept of Bangsa Malaysia, the Malaysian race first, we need to ensure that interaction among races is maximized. And for that to happen, we need to ensure all schools are racially heterogeneous. And one thing which I applaud Chinese schools for, or at least selected Chinese schools, is that oddly enough, they are more heterogeneous than some national schools. I cannot generalize saying all are like that, but there are some. I think the problem is not on Chinese schools alone, because for those who pick out Chinese schools and Chinese schools alone, but then don't pick out, for example, Malay exclusive schools,
Yes.
then you know there's a problem. I always believe in a policy-based solution, where you don't just blame communities, but you address policy. So, very briefly, sorry, mine is slightly nerdy, but I'm
it's
actually,
alright.
one of my plans to write a policy paper on this when I'm in Oxford. It's almost the same thing what the US did, which leads to partial deracialization in schools. Is that while you can keep, for example, you have Chinese schools, you have religious schools and the rest, you create an incentive structure to ensure that more racial minorities, for example, racial minorities or majorities in those respective schools, intermingle with one another. For example, provide more funding to Malay schools or Chinese schools which have, I won't say Malaysian, national schools which are most diverse. For example, if Sekolah Chonghua
Yes.
has a 20 to 30% non-Chinese enrollment, give more funding. We must reward that, because we want to ensure that the Chonghua principal will push and will magnetize more Malays, will do advertisement, whatever, for more Malay parents to send their children there. Similarly, for example, if it is a religious school, one of the top religious schools like Atni, brilliant education background, try attract Chinese Indians to join. They join, reward the school. It is a reward structure to ensure that intermingling starts from young, and it must start from young. And to end this by saying, what liberated me from racial and religious clutches was the Royal Military College, RMC. It is a military school. It is the only, I think, the most diverse boarding school in Malaysia. And when I went there, I met up with Chong Hock Soon, I met up with Daryl Ijawe, I met up with Mahir Rajan, and they ended up becoming my best friends. I mean, we got bullied together, we eat together, we slept together, but not in a weird sleeping way, don't think that. So like in the end, they became my best friends. I mean, just think like last week, they slept over at my house again. I mean, this year during May 13, you know, me and Chong Hock Soon were like, okay, let's do something. It's non-political, not under the party. It's like, let's both co-write a letter of unity. We call Surat Anak Malaysia. We printed 1,000 of it. We went all around KL with our national clothing, and then with like 2 cardboards of like Malaysia thingy, and then we distributed it all around KL. And we'll do it every year. But I learned it all from that diverse military school. It doesn't have to be a military school, but from young. So it must be that way. So military school is different than a national school. So it's not about the system, but it's about diversity from young. That is the aim.
It's interesting that you mentioned Chonghua, but you do realize that Chonghua's qualification, it's not recognized in a way in our system. Yeah.
It will be recognized soon. I mean, hopefully. In Selangor it's recognized, in Penang it's recognized, in Sarawak it's recognized.
Yes. Yeah. But these are the states, these are the exception. It's not recognized by the federal.
It's not my fault, maybe not in federal. But I mean, I think the change will come. And to me again,
But yeah.
we have to be fair in assessing this. I mean, as I mentioned just now, you can't just blame one community and then. I mean, so far, I mean, I've seen people who champion for national schools, which is good, but then at the same time, they're like, oh, only for Chinese schools. Other schools? No. Keep it that way. So that's a problem. At the same time, reverse as well. We can't, only religious schools, but Chinese school we keep. You have to be fair. Again, this is a very difficult issue to deal with, but I believe we can resolve it from a policy platform. Policy is the best way to resolve things. If we see it from a racial lens, it's very hard for us to move forward. And I believe that the way forward, in the long run, is when we ensure that all schools become centers of diversity from young. And again, the aim is for all Malaysians to not just be bilingual, but to be trilingual.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess this is like a very good point to end our conversation today. It's good having you here.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, so look forward to seeing you again, sharing, some of your thoughts and all these things. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Listen to Selena Gomez.
OK， 各位观众朋友，谢谢大家今天晚上的收看。期待下一次的 On the Hot Seat 与你再见，晚安。